This is the first technology where, in my opinion, if it's information that's older than 3 months old, it's pretty much worthless. And the paradigm that we're all used to, that all the decision makers are used to, that they've done for decades is read a study, read a white paper, read this survey, and then make decisions from that. And I just think that's a completely broken way of thinking that we are stuck with, that we didn't cause it to break. It's just broken by the completely novel speed of advancements that is happening with these models. Like what's happening with GPT-5.5 and Opus X, whatever the latest is so far above where we were at the end of last year, 4 months ago, that strategies and staffing and all of that all those studies did, you can't do any planning from them. And I'm, I guess, wondering as a collective, how do we speak to that? How do we say all of these formerly reliable sources of knowledge and these consulting firms and these think tanks, if they're not producing something every 30 days, then don't waste your time, which I know is not probably the stance we want to take. That's just what I feel. But I don't know. I wanted to broach this topic to see if anyone has feedback for me or just thoughts about how we approach the framing of these types of reports that we used to rely on that I just don't think we can anymore.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. And I appreciate the question. And I want to ask this question to go along with that. I think you suggested that the strategy may no longer be valuable after 4 months. And I want to put that out to the team. Do we think that's true? Because it's at two levels, right? It's at the top level of the organization and the strategy that they're building out for how to think about AI and building out their AI transformation strategy. And then there's perhaps the more operational technical level of AI projects. Is it one, Matt, which did you mean? Or two, is the distinction irrelevant?
A fair question. First blush, I would say the distinction is largely irrelevant because I think everything is based around the idea of the model capabilities. And that shapes 100% of how they go and who you staff and what skills you're looking for and what the pipeline looks like. It's all based on what can frontier models do right now. And so in my mind, there's not much of a distinction.
Josh, do you agree with that?
Dolan has his hand up, so let's hear from him first.
This is part of a bigger conversation everybody's having around employment and how these models are going to affect things. I can tell you from my own personal experience and from what I'm reading that you can't be doing the same work that you were doing. The model that you have to take is that you have to assume that you have to do way more than you were doing before, both as an individual contributor and also as an organization. Like if you look at what's happening now, product managers and engineers are kind of fusing together, and the engineers are starting to write in products directly into the code, and they're getting involved in marketing, and like all of this stuff is kind of fusing together. And the way that you have to manage this stuff is you have to set your expectations much higher than you did before there was AI, both on an individual level and also as an organizational level. And if you don't set your goals high enough, then you're kind of going to get left behind. You've got to just be sort of thinking about this stuff like, we're going to try to do like a 10x more than what we were doing before. Then you use the tools to help you push along. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but I think the fundamental assumption that people always make is, how am I managing what I'm doing today? You really have to think about, how am I going to do 10x what I'm doing today? Start with that assumption.
Thanks for the perspective, Delon. How about you, Ted?
I think about it in terms of strategy, like looking at numbers, I don't think is necessarily the right way to go. Everybody's like 10x or 100x or talking about spend. If I didn't have all this friction, where could I go and what could I do? I know 12 computer languages or something, and having to go through and look at where the semicolons are, where the tabs are, what the exact syntax is for everything. Not having to do any of that stuff anymore is huge. And it's the same thing about other parts of the business. If you could get people that don't have to get bogged down in all the day-to-day friction of telling Excel how to do this or something like that, then that's where the strategy is. And that doesn't change depending on the models. That's like change your way of thinking and then use whatever model is most available at the time today, because if you get locked into something today, it's going to change tomorrow. They nerfed Claude, and then lo and behold, Opus has a a 5.5 that is amazing, and then tomorrow Claude or Gemini is going to leapfrog all that. So, we've been getting ahead of vendor lock-in for as long as there's been computers, right? So you have to think about what the strategy is and what you could do if you don't have friction anymore.
The interesting thing, though, is I don't know that we've been getting ahead of vendor lock-in. We talk about it a lot, but I don't know. I've seen so many organizations locked on Azure, locked on AWS, locked on Salesforce, locked on this, locked on that. And we're starting to see it again in AI. I got to be honest with you. I was never really a huge fan of Anthropic. It was okay. Their models are good. Their models are really good sometimes. So are GPTs. But why did I lock to Anthropic? Because their Claude Code ecosystem that they put together was the best out there. And it's still weak, by my opinion. It's still weak in every respect, but it's better than the rest. It's better than Codex still. Now, Codex is starting to get a little better, and Matt has some experience in getting elves moved over to Codex, so he's actually gotten it even better. Yay. I want to get tied into that. But I feel like we're still walking into the trap of, like, every time someone hands us a shotgun, we point it at our feet and go, can I hit my toes? Oh.
Isn't that the point of Elves and Denise and all that stuff? That at some point you've got an abstraction layer on top of the model. The model doesn't matter anymore. You just switch those out.
Absolutely. And I think Denise and Proteus will bring us to that if we can build it. I just say, as a society, I don't see many other people out there really pushing on Denises and Proteuses. I see everybody else out there kind of just glumping onto the model du jour.
Which is bizarre to me. Haven't they learned anything from being a fanboy?
I don't think it's bizarre. Here, I'll show you why. I'm going to show you this. All right. I've shown this to a couple people, and this is a beautiful little chart. So what you have over here is different aspects. You have leadership, rules and constraints, people mindset. You can read. And then you have situation down here, what your product is and what your organization is doing. And a lot of people are kind of in this area right here with AI. That's where they're sitting at. They're still wondering how it fits. They're custom building some stuff. It's custom built. There's a few that might be pushing it up into about here, but I would strongly argue nobody's in this area over here. Over in product rental, nobody's here. Nobody's here yet. Okay. If you look at how this translates into different methodologies, you have your toolboxes, design thinking, agile, lean, Six Sigma, all those fun things. People are clamoring for this right here. And people are implementing for this right here, efficiency and optimization. That's what they're doing. They're not actually going over here where the problem is and doing iteration, design thinking, and attacking the problem in a way in their organization that's actually changing their organization. They're trying to exploit what they currently have and exploit right here.
That's the message that I haven't seen anywhere else.
Exactly. And so you need different people. You need different types of rules and constraints. You need different type of leadership. You need this across the board to tackle the problem where the problem is, not where you've seen the problems. We keep looking at, let's have a chatbot that does customer service better. And it's like, well, your customer service is around a product that shouldn't even exist anymore because you were solving for a constraint that no longer matters, right? If you don't have a sales pipeline or a market that's supporting you increasing your capacity by X or 10X or whatever it is, it doesn't matter how fast you can churn that stuff out if nobody's buying it. And it doesn't matter anymore. These are paradigm shifts for organizations. These aren't just optimization opportunities and efficiency opportunities. That's where people start because that's what people know. That's not where these tools come into play. It doesn't really matter what model you're using to solve yesterday's problem because, yeah, it's going to absolutely solve it. It's going to do it even better and do all that stuff all day long. What truly matters is, does your operating model and does your business even matter anymore? Is it solving for the constraints that the world is pushing up against? I had a great conversation with he's the CEO of a marketing agency a few months back. And he's like, before all these AI tools, 15% of my day was thinking and 85% of my day was, working on different products. And that is completely flipped. It's now 85% I'm actually thinking and 15% is actually working on products because of all these automations and these tools. And he's like, and my day is so much harder. I go home tired every day because I'm trying to think. And thinking is hard. Problem solving is hard. It's uncomfortable. People aren't practiced in it. People aren't used to it. That's not what they've built their their lives around. That's not what they've built their purpose around. That's not what they've built their skill sets around. They built their skill sets around stuff, that invoice or that, that workflow to move this piece of paper over to that piece of paper and to copy it in triplicate, not what new problems are there out there to solve. That's a much bigger problem. And that has nothing to do with the actual models that are out there. It has to do with the paradigm shift and the mindset shift.
So what's your conclusion then, Josh, based on the premise that Matt suggested that a company's strategy could be outdated in 4 months?
Yeah, especially if it's pointing in the wrong direction. If it's pointing at what you did before, and you look at strategic foresight models and other different models and scenario planning and things like that, a lot of strategic frameworks, just in general, SWOT analysis, Blue Ocean, Three Horizons, a lot of that stuff is based off of what existed before, right? And it's all based off of your understanding. You do research, you do all these different things, you do Porter's 5 forces. There's all these different methodologies and all these different frameworks that people use for years. And they work great for a linear problem set where you can look at the past and somewhat come up with what's going on in the future. And you can do that. Yeah, exactly. How to optimize production of carriage wheels, right? What do you need? A faster horse. That's what I want. I don't need a car, right? It's a completely different shift, a completely different mindset, and a completely different way to approach the problem. Instead of a linear thinking model, you have to use a non-linear thinking model, and you have to start like iterating and see your strategy needs to be emergent and not set in stone. That's hard. It's hard for people. People haven't strategized that way for a very long time. Some people are going to be really good at it. Some people are going to be terrible at it. The people that are terrible at it might still win based off just sheer willpower and dumb luck. But a lot of them are going to collapse, and it's going to create brittle organizations. Go ahead, Matt.
A quick thought from me that I think speaks to the larger challenge that we're facing here, that in my opinion, the only people that are going to get this, the only people that are going to get what we're selling and agree to it, are people that have mastered setting aside self and setting aside the idea that they can lean on their past victories and they can lean on their past knowledge and that they've done all these things. It is the complete sacrifice of the ego and the complete sacrifice of the idea of self, to be honest, that I think are going to be the only folks that get it. And the reason I say that is because AI is not new. We have seen this coming for 3 years now. Any of these COOs, any of these CEOs, they could have hired any number of dozens of qualified technical people to get eyeballs on this from the very beginning and help them have a pathway to success. This should not be a surprise to a single executive out there right now. And if they're surprised by this, and if they're not prepared for this, it's because they failed to plan for it. And it's almost certainly because they are trying to cram the idea of AI into something they already know. Well, it's another UML. Well, it's another crypto. Well, it's another fad. Well, it's another one of these things that I've seen for over my 30-year career. So I've got it all figured out. So I'm just not going to worry about it. Josh, I'd say this because I think you're spot on. It requires a complete change of thinking. It is not going to come from throwing another paper in front of them or throwing more numbers in front of them. It is about, you have to accept that this is not like anything you've seen before at all. It's not even close. But we have people that have been following from the beginning. We can help advise you on this. And I think that is our deep challenge, that is not just on the executive side, it's on our side too, of being able to say, I have got to question everything I thought was true historically over my whole career, or I'm going to be lost.
So Matt, based on all the rest of the conversation, where's your stance now? Do you still think that investing in a proper strategy is a kind of a waste of time because it's going to change in 4 months anyways?
I think my original comment was more around the idea of these studies that we see every day on LinkedIn. There's another study that uses an ancient model to prove a point that's no longer valid. So I don't know. I mean, this is a bit outside of my lane, but I would say the more we can demonstrate the newness of this in terms of what they've already experienced and seen is, I think that's the hearts and minds factor. I think is going to be way bigger than trying to convince them from a data standpoint or from, a study standpoint. Once you win the hearts and minds battle, then everything else flows because they get it. They go, this is completely novel. I can't figure this out on my own. I've got to hire experts. They're sitting right in front of me. That's what I think.
Josh, what do you think is the final conclusion on it? Wasted time or not wasted time?
Just different structure to strategy and to planning and to developing the discipline as an organization to not get complacent with that. Like, it's harder. Strategy to me is emergent. It always has been, right? Strategy is not the plan that gets put into place. It's the why that the plan is based off of. I think if you're able to shift your mindset to understand that strategy is something that is constantly emerging, that you have to refine, that you have to prepare for. I wrote the essay called The Open Condition, and it's about sensing what you're actually up against, sensing the unknown, right? And receiving that and taking the time to understand that and taking the time to incorporate that and then choosing what to encode. That process just became much faster for us to actually to leverage that. And we're out of practice to be able to do that as an organization. So I think you need to have an understanding that these are skills that we need to develop, the strategic thinking skills, the critical thinking skills, the sense-making skills as organizations. And then you need the discipline to be able to plan around what you're receiving, test those assumptions, test those questions, account for that, and be able to iterate on those and just continue to be able to apply those to your business structure. I know that's a lot of abstract stuff and saying it as a general statement, but that's what's needed. We've done this with tech debt. We got into, everybody's like, oh, you got to eliminate tech debt. No, number one, every time you put something into production, it's tech debt. There is tech debt to every single thing that you do, right? And the reason that there's tech debt is because something new just came out that day, even though that you were applying it. You don't want tech debt to become invisible, and you don't want it to become strategic debt where it's anchoring you down and pulling you back. You need to have it visible. You need to be aware of it. And you need to understand that when the next big thing comes out that might change, you need to have a process in place that you can actively address that. That's called continuous improvement, right? That's what that is. So we have models for these things. We've done them poorly for years in different organizations, but that's what it's about. As soon as it becomes strategic debt in your organization, now you're having to actively fight against something that is reducing your performance instead of assuming risk and operating within that risk of technical debt. And that's one on tech debt. And that goes for people, products, markets, all sorts of stuff. But a lot of techies on here, so tech debt works well for that conversation.